Happy almost lunches time is here, which is exciting. But let's go ahead and start with number 1. Question, what features were you guys able to, or what are you able to do when you're graphing to change the style of the graph? What's something you can do? Talk.
Change the window, change the
Okay, you could change the window, but specifically in context of what's going on right here, how do you make things regular or thick or shaded above or shaded below? What's going on there? Oh, someone found it. Come on. How do we do it? Do we not get to number 1 yet? What'd you say? Yeah. Move, if you go up and you're in the equation itself and you type the negative 2x plus 5, now remember it's not, I think this was written in the common errors. Don't use the minus sign, use the negative sign, which is this little sign down here. But when you have negative 2x plus 5, then just go backwards with your cursor, 2 spots, and you're on that little symbol right here. Now some of you guys have the light up screen, and you can make it like different colors, you can do all sorts of cool stuff. For the rest of us, it's just being able to change it by clicking enter to bold or shaded above or shaded below. What's the little circle do? Did anybody actually figure that one out? It's one you probably haven't used before. I use it in calculus some, and we use it at the end of this year. When you graph it, this one not only graphs, but it also shows you the placement of the graph. And in some graphs where they might do like a rotation and keep on tracing itself over and over, it's really helpful for this one to be able to see what's going on. Now, does anybody know this is taking forever, how we can stop the calculator in the middle of doing something? Enter is going to pause it. No, it's already gone through. Enter is going to pause it. Let me go through and I think there's another weird circle-y one that doesn't show the graph. Let's do that one. It's going to take a long time again. Enter pauses it right where it's at. Pressing enter again starts it back up. But if I want to go somewhere else, I want to hit the on button. Because sometimes your calculator, like you've given it something to do and it's just thinking. You're like, I'm taking a test. I need you to stop. I need you, like, I'm going to go do something else. Hit the on button. That breaks the code. It says stop whatever you're doing, and you can go back to the y equals. You can go back to the home screen. You stopped it from completing its action. Does that kind of make sense? So the on stops it where it's at, whatever it's doing. The enter only pauses it. Okay? That's pretty nifty to know as well. And I think there's, what, one more, the dotted one? And then we're done. So you guys were just supposed to pick one of those and then go ahead and show me a quick sketch that you know how to put in an equation and go ahead and hit the graph button. But this whole paragraph tells you things like, in order to put the X, hit this button. In order to get into the menu, hit this button. So if you haven't used a calculator before, read through this. It'll tell you step by step what to do. One more thing. Did anybody's calculator say error when you hit the graph button? Wow, first time. Both classes, nobody got an error. Okay. It usually happens because if you guys just hit the up arrow, some of you might not have realized you could have done this. You can actually turn your stat plots on without going to stat plot by just going up and just hitting the enter, and you'll select a stat plot. And if for any reason you accidentally like bumped your calculator, and if you didn't realize this was turned on and you went to go graph it, it's like the same equation. Everything's great, right? It's not happy because with this selected, I just got out of it. With this selected, you're saying, go look at my lists and I want you to go graph from a table, and you never put a table in. Or even worse, you have a table in and these random little like points are going to appear. So we want to make sure if you're not using the list feature, like if you're not putting tables of data into your calculator, all of these need to be turned off. And the same way these can be selected or deselected, these equal signs can as well. I can deselect it and say, nope, I don't want you to graph, and it's not going to. There's nothing there. And this is nice because if you need to do multiple equations, you can select, like if you write them all down, you can graph 1 and 3 or 2 and 4, etc. You can select which ones you want to graph. Okay, number 2. Have you guys been able to get that in your graphing calculator?
Yes.
Okay, a couple people maybe haven't yet. If you haven't been able to get it in your calculator, take a second. X squared, you need the variable button. Squared, you need 1. There are actually 2 ways to do squared. just to get us ready for the next, I think it's number 3. How would I do x cubed? I can't use the squared button on x cubed. So what do I do instead? The little caret. And for those of you guys that have the calculator with a yellow button, sadly the caret's just going to stay there. For those of you guys with one of the newer ones, can everybody do a quick test for me real fast? Can you just go to the home screen? I just want you to hit X and I want you to hit the caret button. Okay? If your calculator has a yellow second button, it's one of the older calculators has a yellow second button, yours is going to literally put a little caret, and that's sadly all we can do. The operating systems are completely non-compatible, like they're uncompatible. I can't possibly reprogram yours in order to make it look like this, which is really sad, but it's okay. It does everything else the other one does besides log base. You just have to memorize a formula everyone else should memorize, and you'll be fine. It just won't look as pretty. But anyone that has a calculator that looks like this, it doesn't have a yellow second button, it has like a blue one or a gray one. Does anybody's calculator looking like this have a caret and not written like this? Ooh, interesting. I'll have to check yours out. But everybody else's, it goes up? Okay. I could update the operating systems of these ones. I just can't update those ones. I'll have to check on yours and see if I can update it or not. It's convenient to have it like this. It just makes everything look prettier. But anyway, so if you need to do x squared or x cubed or x to the 4th, yes, it's the caret button. Okay. You guys should have had time, I think. For number 2, what happens when you try to graph it? It's a parabola in a standard window? What's it mean by standard? I mean, I see it, but how do you get the standard window?
Don't you zoom out? It's in order to see the...
You could zoom out, but what is it talking about standard window? That's not zoomed out yet, right? When you go under the zoom, which one is standard?
6.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever you see standard window, I think it probably refers to it in the paragraph above, but standard window is just talking about zoom standard, zoom 6. So instead of you guys having to go in and do it yourselves, it makes the 10 by 10 grid for you. So it's reminding you of what a zoom standard is. Except here's the problem. Where's my graph? X squared plus 13. It's not there. Now some of you guys said zoom out, and that's a good idea. It's not a bad idea. Zoom 3, right? If it's not there, maybe it's somewhere else, and is it? Yeah. And if you have like some foundation in algebra, maybe you remember that x squared plus 13 is just a parabola shifted up 13, right? So it makes sense that it wouldn't be in a 10 by 10 grid, but this is just trying to introduce you to the fact that just because zoom standard is zoom standard doesn't mean it always works, right? So for number 2, how'd you guys tell me that you did it? And then what do you write down? Well, an empty graph maybe, or you can just say it's not there, right? Literally. And then what does the next page tell you to do? Mess with the window. Yeah. Now, how did they tell you to change the window? Are they even telling you about zoom yet? Technically not until letter C. So when they tell you to make the window this, how do we manually change the window? I mean, we're used to the zoom buttons, right? Zoom in, zoom out, zoom standard, if you've used the calculator before. Go to the window button. And then when we're playing with the window button, oh, mine's funny right now because of zoom standard. We can just type and then enter and then type and then enter. We're just blindly following like a little monkey, just filling in. We can follow the directions, right? But hold on, let's pause and let's think. What are we actually changing? I know, but how does that relate to a graph, though? Like for some people, you're like, oh, of course, the x in, x max. But for others, they don't understand exactly what those stand for. And it is going to be important to know how to manually change your window. What's x and y stand for? Yeah, the axes, good. I have my x-axis, I have my y-axis. If I'm talking about the x minimum, the lowest x value, can you tell me up here, is that how far up, down, right, or left the graph is going? Exactly. Does that make sense? So my x min is going to tell the graph how far to the left I'm going to go. The x max is going to tell me how far to the right I'm going to go. How about the x scale? SCL, x scale. What's that mean?
It's counting by ones or twos, right?
Tick marks. How often are the tick marks? If the x scale is 1, it's going to go by 1s to the x max. If it's 5, it's going to go by 5s to the x max. If we're doing things like sine, cosine, tangent, and degrees, it takes 360 degrees to be just one rotation around a circle. We don't want to go by 1s. That's going to be annoying. But going by 90s or 45s might make a little more sense. What else do we have? Y min? What's that? How low? Right? And then Y max, it's the only one left, yeah? And then Y scale is just what your tick marks are. We're not going to stress too much about the resolution and all that sort of stuff. But this is how those values, those parameters, change or manipulate our graph itself. So that's what you're changing when you change it. And when you do change it, how much better was the graph? Yeah, I see it a lot better, right? And the tick marks aren't all squished together either. I can kind of see what's going on. I want you guys to go ahead and play with number 3. I want you to play with number 3. Now, careful. Just try to type this in and then just hit the graph button. This is what the graph is supposed to look like. I want you guys to tell me what the graph looks like when you first graph it. Just with the window that you have in from the problem up above. What's missing? Use your little caret. Exponent button for the key. Using subtractions, not negatives. Go straight to standing. And we'll talk more about the zooms in a second too. Does it look like that when you guys just graphed it? What's missing? The whole second part of it, right? So if we just looked at the graph, even in Zoom Standard, I can go back to there too. I'm just using whatever one that they gave me up above. It looks like a parabola, right? Now, once again, if we have some math background, maybe we know a cubic shouldn't look like a parabola, right? But if we weren't thinking, we might just like sketch it and say, yeah, whatever, done. Question. If you saw this, and if it was a quiz or a test, and if you put together, like, this isn't a cubic, I can't see the whole thing. Or maybe I asked the question, find the minimum, and you're like, I don't see one. How would you go about changing your window? Now, some of you astute ones are like, the answer's down below. Forget that. And some of you don't even know how to read that. Come back up here. What would you do? By ones that have used the calculators before, what would you try? I see you doing it. What do you try?
Zoom out.
Yeah, we can try zoom out, right? There are some presets in the zoom menu, and you can see them down here below. And you could maybe try something like zoom out. Now when you zoom out, you're like, it's still going to be a parabola. Psych. No, it's not. There's something else going on. But still, can you see the minimum? Okay. Could I keep trying to zoom out? And the answer is yes. But if specifically they want me to get a picture where I'm kind of zoomed in on this part of the graph, zooming out's not going to get me there. So what could I do? Manually change? Okay. Question, do I need to be this far left? Okay, so what do I change if it's the how far left parameter? Let's go ahead and cut down the x minimum, bring it closer to 0. Do I need all of this over here?
No.
Okay, cut down the x max. Don't need all of this, so I'm going to cut down the y max. But what do I need to increase?
The y min.
Okay. So we're going to go over here to the window. We're going to play with some of those parameters. We're going to say negative 32. Nah, that's way too high. 32, way too high. And actually this one seemed to be even a little bit more stretched, so maybe I'll come in even closer on that. The y min, oh, that wasn't low enough. I need to go way lower. Let's try, like, I don't know, negative 400. But it was plenty high. Like on this graph, it's not very high at all. I'm kind of using the picture they gave me, so I'll cut that way down. Now guys, was there anything magical about my numbers? No, I just made them smaller. I made the negatives closer to 0, the positives closer to 0, and I saw, like, I have to go way farther down. I kind of doubled it. So there's nothing super snazzy about the numbers. I'm just plugging in some stuff to try to change it up a little bit. And what happens is, I did come in, and I did come in. I could use a little more coming in. I came way down, and I'm closer. If you're doing trial and error, it might take you a while to get there. But can you guys see down here? How are they writing this? They're not writing x min or x max. They're not writing y min or y max. What's this notation mean? If I were you, I'd get your color pens out. And I would label a couple things just so you make sure you understand. This is actually called interval notation. I won't quiz you on that yet. This is called interval notation. It's not like an ordered pair. This is not an x and y. This is actually an interval of x's, like an inequality. So what you see up there, I keep leaving my mark over here. When you see that comma, it doesn't mean just like, oh, hey, negative 10 and 15. No, it means negative 10 through 15. And when the x is before it, it's just another way of writing an inequality. So the comma just kind of is denoting through. It's a shorter way of typing it so that you don't need special symbols and all that sort of stuff, which is maybe where the notation came from. But if that's true, this is the lowest x can be and this is the highest. This would be the same thing in your graphing calculator as your x min. And so this would be your x max and then your y min and then your y max. Then these match up with what's in your calculator, right? With the scales. So they're just telling you what to make your window. It's just a snazzier way of writing it so that you don't have to actually write out each of the different terms necessarily. So it's just showing you the range for x and the range of y. If you want to think domain of x and range of y, but we're not there. Okay, cool. As we go on in the graphing calculator handbook, this one, some of you guys might have really worked hard on this, like if you had had more time and if it had been homework tonight or something like that. And then you would have been like, oh, the answer's right there. Is this the answer? Or is it an answer? Does that make sense? So if you got a picture that was pretty close, like I didn't think mine was all that bad, so that you should go a little bit lower. No big dealio. Just write your window down and be like, oh yeah, okay, that was pretty close. And it's not like this one's perfect. It's not. It just was the one that they found, but yours might have been just as good and shown the curvature of the graph just then. Okay. So just because they give you something doesn't mean it's the right answer necessarily. If you guys haven't yet, go ahead and go play with number 4. Let me go ahead and give you like 5 minutes. If some of you guys got lost somewhere behind when I was talking about the zoom button or the window button, go ahead and talk it out in your groups a little bit. If they can't help, raise your hand. But go ahead and try to do number 4, and if you can, maybe even on to number 5. Then I'll come back and see how we're doing. Oh, just hit the over arrow to get out of the.
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
Sorry, we clicked on the okay.
Usually it's all 10.
Let's see. On this one, what was weird about the equation? Just right away. Just looking at the equation, what's weird about it or what's different?
It has a cube and a square.
Okay, it has a cubed, it has a squared, but what's going on with those coefficients, huh? What are they? Yeah, they're super tiny. And if the decimals, if the coefficients in the equation are super tiny, question, is that going to change what can come in and get plugged into the equation, the x's? Or is that going to change what comes out of the equation, the y's? They're super tiny coefficients. Can you still plug in like x is 100? Yeah. But what's true about the y's when you plug it in? You usually plug in 100, isn't that a big y? But what's going to go on with the 0.000 times? It's going to be small. So the x's, nothing's really changing with the x's. I don't care if I'm going negative 10 to 10, negative 20 to 20. The x's, sure, we can plug them all in. But with those tiny coefficients, those y's are going to be. So when you guys went to go graph it in a standard window, is a standard window taking into account, now hold on, how do you do standard window again? Good, zoom and then number 6. Is this standard window taking into account that these y's get really small? No, it's just doing negative 10 to 10. Who cares? It's measuring the x's and the y's the same. So that's why zoom standard is actually, hopefully you guys noticed as you went through all 3 if you were able to. It's a bad window. How did zoom fit work out? Zoom fit, did you guys figure out what number is that? Is that 0?
10, or yeah. 0.
Okay. It takes forever for me to scroll. I have like a lag on my calculator. So I'm going to go there. Still looks pretty flat in the middle, right? So if I didn't know better, it must be one of those cubics that doesn't do the little Humpty Hump thing, right? It just does straight across. But then what did that last one have you do? What did it have you change with those y's? Yeah, manually go in and actually make this range be very limited because the y's get very small. It even has you do the tick marks very small. And what did you guys notice about what was really going on in there? I was probably supposed to change the x's too, but I still this time. Is it straight across? No. But when you're looking at it and the y's are all squished together, all these very small values of y's are just being squished together, you can't see it. But if you zoom in on what's changing, what's different, which is the y's because they're really small, then you'll actually see that little dip. Does this graph have a max and a min?
Yes.
Would you have known that to begin with? So, yeah, exactly. So here's what we need to learn from basically pages 1, 2, and even 3. Is the zoom menu good? Yeah. But is it always going to get you the perfect representation of what's going on? No. So do you need to be able to play around with that manual window, especially when the equations are kind of funky and weird? Yes. Does that make sense? Okay. It's so easy when you come into Precalc to be like, oh, the zooms are awesome. Zoom fit, zoom fit, zoom fit. And you're going to miss out on some of these weird things and just not know what's going on. Okay? Table features. Have you guys ever played with the table? Probably haven't quite gotten there. Let's go ahead and take a few minutes and let's play with the table. Some of you are like, shh, table's no problem. I'm going to show you, actually I don't know what my table settings are. I can guess based on the other periods, but they always kind of change throughout the day. I think they even have you using the same function, so don't erase it, it's the same one. How do I get to my table? Let's kind of work through this together, just so we can get a little further. How do we see a table?
Second table.
Yeah, we're going to the table. If you guys haven't noticed, the second button is like on a computer, the shift button. It gets you more options. So above the graph is a blue table. Second gets us that table menu. Mine probably doesn't look like yours. What's different? I mean, the numbers are different, obviously, but isn't yours like all filled in? You probably like scroll down in yours and see more values, right? What's going on with mine? Well, this screen looks maybe helpful. How do we get there? Maybe you can look at mine and see what's different. Okay, so second window. P.S. When I hit delete, these start going away. Second window. How is mine different than yours? Start. Table start. 0. Change in table. You guys know what this Greek letter is? The triangle? Delta. You know what it means in math? Or even like science or chem or anything like that? It means change in. Slope equation. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 can be written delta y over delta x. Change in. Anyway, change in table going by ones. So what's different? Independent are x's, right? Yours, probably the auto is selected, and it's going to automatically fill in the x's for you based on these two restrictions. Mine, I just wanted to ask for some problem I did last year, probably. So then I was able to, and maybe you guys can see the benefit to this. With ask, I'm able to put in whatever value I want. I can even delete them all out. And I can say, well, I want at 2. Well, now I want at 8. Well, now I want at 0.1. So if this was one of those problems where you had to plug in a lot of x's, maybe this is a really fast way of doing it, is with a table. However, if you're trying to like have a list that you can manipulate and scroll down in and jump to different places, or even if you're just trying to make it look like theirs, instead of having second window, ask selected, you want to have automatic selected. Then it should look like theirs, where it starts at 0, goes by ones. What if I wanted to get to like, well, I don't know. First of all, just to show you what does happen, if I was to put a 5 instead, I would start at 5, and then changing by ones, I would go to 6, and then 7, and then 8. What if I wanted to get to 105? Using the automatic, you could change it to ask and type in 105. But using automatic, what could you do? Go by 100? That's a good idea, because we could scroll to 105, but who wants to do that? Did you guys see that little black toolbar that showed up for a second when I first hit second graph? Have you ever used it? I can change it to go by 2s. I can change it to go by 5s. I can change it to go by 100s. Little shortcut, kind of random, but kind of cool. So I can get to 105 just by going by 100s, and that's just by hitting the plus sign. Something that kind of pops up. To be honest, I never really even paid attention to it until even earlier today. I was like, oh, that's fun. Let's use that shortcut. So that's pretty nifty. But then, once again, you could change it to ask, and then do it that way. There's obviously more reading as to what you can be hitting and what you can be changing. How are we going to do number 5? It says 0.9. How do we do that? Okay, I can change it to ask and just type in 0.9, right?
Yeah.
Or if you were at the 0, for instance, if we were back at the normal, what you guys were doing, instead of going and changing and typing in, couldn't you just say, let's go by point? What do you think? 0.1s? Ah, we're lazy. We don't want to scroll. How about by 0.3s? Doesn't that sound good? Because then I have 0.9 right there. So you go by 0.1s, you go by 0.3s. But once again, you could go to ask and just type it in. And if you don't want to have your screen be all messy like mine was before you leave the screen, if you are in ask, just go ahead and hit that delete button. That's how you get rid of the different entries. So you could go ahead and do the ask, plug in 0.9. And if you want to get rid of that, just go ahead and hit delete. One more thing that happens with tables, if for any reason you ever go to a table and the y is not showing, you're like, I don't have a y. Probably because your equation got deleted. You have to go to your y equals, probably type in your equation. If the y is not there, it's probably just that you didn't write that equation in. Sometimes it just gets missed. Does anybody see a typo in the next paragraph? Especially anyone who's using chemistry. Yeah. Yeah. In some ways, that's true. Scientific notation, if you guys think about it. If I was to write negative 0.0008, scientific notation is usually written times 10 to the power of, right? But our calculator way of doing that, now I haven't filled that in yet, is with an E. The typo, though, is what they put in the E. Is negative 0.0008 negative 8 times 10 to the 4th power? That'd be a big number, right? Help me out. Intercolored pen, let's correct the typo. It shouldn't be to the positive fourth power, because if it was the positive 4th power, that'd be negative 8 times, yeah, it'd be negative 8,000, right? One of them, right? So, we need to instead make it a negative 4 power, just to make everything make sense. So this is my calculator way of doing it, so if this ever comes up on your calculator screen, what it means is, which is the same thing as, why is it a little number? Remember that negative exponents in math is really the denominator? Maybe that makes a little more sense as to why it's negative 0.000. Anyway. One of these days I need to fix that typo, or maybe it's my way of seeing whether you guys are paying attention. We'll talk a little bit more about this whole 4e to the negative 12 tomorrow. My goal today was to get as close to page 6 as possible. And here's the reason why. In your calculator worksheet number 1, what's coming in pages 4, 5, and 6 is a lot of what you need for calculator worksheet number 1, which is, I think, homework tonight. If you guys look on the back board, if you haven't noticed yet, there is a pre-calc column. Calculator worksheet number 1 is only one side. I want you to try to do that for tomorrow. But you're going to see words in there like intersections, values, zeros, mins, and maxes. We got all the way through the handbook up until where it's going to talk about how to do that. It's going to be a little confusing in number 6 because it says graph and then find, but you haven't learned how. Read pages 4, 5, and 6. It walks you through reminding you how to find maxes, mins, intersections, zeros. Then hopefully you know how to answer this question and do the worksheet. Sound good? Okay, so for tonight, calculator worksheet number 1, and if you need, pages 4, 5, and 6 will teach you that. I'll see you guys later. Come find me after school if you have any questions.